Hello, everyone. I'm Dawn Westmoreland, hailing from Asheville, North Carolina, the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains, coming from WPVM FM LP 103.7, the voice of Asheville. So delighted to be a talk host. My show is syndicated with the Pacifica Network. You might hear me in Canada, anywhere in the United States, or the Virgin Island. And my show is called The Empowered Whistleblower. We like to blow the whistle on tactics, stories, tips, advice on empowerment, courage, resiliency. And you can watch and listen to my show because I always pre-record my show Tuesdays at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time Zone, or you may hear it a different day or time in the Pacifica Network. Today, I am delighted Dr. Summer Watson introduced me to Bibiana Kall. Did I say your last name correctly, Kral?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, because I am famous for renaming people, and I don't want to rename you. You are a bright and fairy soul. Now, let me tell you about Bibiana. This show is about resiliency, courage. When I found out about her, I had to meet her. We talked on the phone before this interview, and I'm like, oh my God, I've never met anybody this brave, courageous, and resilient. And I've met a lot of people in my 60 years. So welcome, Bibiana. How are you today?
Thank you so much. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Now your whole life has just been a series of resiliency and overcoming and not just surviving but thriving that it just absolutely blows my mind and not much blows my mind these days because I've seen a lot, spending 20 years in the Air Force. But let's start out at a young age. You were 16 years old and you had ideas of what you wanted to become, and I'll let you jump in there.
Okay. Well, when I was 4 years old, I went out in the backyard. I snuck out in the backyard, and there was this beautiful celestial show. It was in the summer, and all these beautiful stars. And I laid in the grass, and I decided what I was going to be for the rest of my life. Now, that's probably pretty unusual for a 4 year old, but I decided I was going to be a professional ballerina,
Mm.
and then I was going to be a novelist, and then I was going to be an environmental attorney, or possibly a like a witness advocate. So I had it all mapped out. 4 years old, all mapped out. And when I was 16, I had been hustling very hard to be a ballerina and had gotten myself to the point where I was in a small repertoire company and was getting scholarships to very prestigious ballet companies like New York City Ballet Company to
Mm.
dance with the principal dancers and do really amazing things. And then I got in a terrible accident, and as I was getting in the terrible accident, I was like kind of mid negotiation, trying to figure out which company I really wanted to go for. I was fighting my body type as a ballerina because ballerinas on the East Coast are typically very much underweight, whereas ballerinas on the West Coast tend to be more athletic and a little bit closer to what a normal human's body looks like.
Mm.
But anyway, so I was weighing all that kind of stuff. Like, I'd been sacrificing for years and getting ready, but when I got in this accident, it debrided my right leg, basically cut my leg off at the knee, and the only thing that was still connected was my main artery. Otherwise, I would have bled to death in the road. When a very kind, I think it was my guardian angel, by the way, which is another story. A very kind man turned off my motorbike and called an ambulance for me. But fast forward to a lot of pain, a lot of not dying on the side of the road, and the everybody telling me after many surgeries, almost a year had passed, I could finally walk again, which I had been told I might not even be able to do. Um, and
Mm.
everybody kept telling me I was okay.
Yeah.
Everybody kept saying, "Oh, this is great. You can just go right back to it." But my time had already passed, and I knew it. I knew it. I was never, ever, ever going to be strong the way that I was before, and I knew it. and I didn't want to teach. I mean, what kind of 16, 17-year-old wants to give up the big time and become basically a teacher? No bouquets of flowers,
Mhm.
no fabulous tutus, no travel around the world. And I grew up on a little farm in Michigan with a gigantic Catholic family. I
Mhm.
had big dreams, and it blew them to pieces, this this accident. But when people kept telling me I was okay, and I would say to them, I'm not okay. I know I'm not okay. Because I physically was starting to look at least not like Frankenstein anymore. Because I was all sewn together, all shoved together pieces.
Mm.
Um, I saw this picture of a tropical island in a magazine and fixated on it so much that I decided that was the only place I could go that would fix me. And so I saved my money, and in secret, I actually went. And um, when I got there, the sun was setting, and it was more beautiful than even in the picture. More beautiful. And, whipped off my outfit, threw on my bikini, jumped in the water, dove straight down in the most crystal clear water you can imagine. I
Mm.
mean, clearer than a glass of drinking water. And saw a stone like on the bottom of this super white sand and tried to grab the stone, and it moved and sort of like took off. Well, it was a gigantic ray. He almost got me because he was pretty scared. He was like, "What is this? What is this human doing?" Um, but anyway, so I shot out of the water. He shot the other way, and I sat on the edge of the water and watched the sunset and thought, "My gosh, this is it." But then I also thought, "My gosh, I'm not healed. This didn't do anything. I've got so much work to do, and I need to find out." And that's actually when the adventure really started to begin. When I realized that no matter how many times I jumped in that water, I had a lot of work to
Yeah. Now, how did you survive? Did you have money?
do. Well, I had saved almost $2,000 and made the mistake of showing it to somebody because I was so proud of myself. Because I'm young.
Yeah, that's a big
And
wow.
right. I mean, it was all cash, woo. That's a lot of dough. And I didn't realize that this person had actually stolen it from me until I was already at the airport, and opened up my wallet, and the only money that was in there was money that I kind of tucked away to not tempt myself to spend it. So it was like even kind of hidden from myself. But I ended up going with $92, and I was on a Caribbean island. And um but it turns out it's really funny in the Caribbean. Nobody cares what your age is if you want to bartend. So I became the world's youngest bartender, basically.
Oh my goodness. And you were 17 years old?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but the funny thing is that they really don't ask your age in most of these islands. They couldn't care less. Nobody cares. So if you can breeze past that part, you're fine. You're absolutely fine. But yeah, of course I had never done it before. I mean, like, I grew up in Michigan. The drinking age is 21. So so I'm a runaway. My friends are all in school, busting their what's, doing geometry and whatever, and I'm down in the Caribbean making pina colada frozen drinks. So there you go.
Oh my gosh. And now how long were you in the islands?
I was down there for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, and I ended up really living on two different islands. I got a job through like a local newspaper and was a nanny for a little while, like an au pair. Um, but most of the time I was bartending.
That is
So
unreal. Your story is just so interesting. Now, your parents and your loved ones back home, did they know that you were going to do this?
no, no, I mean, because I think it got to the point where, everybody kept telling me, like, when you're not okay, and you say to people that you love and you care about, they actually care about you too. You say, I'm not okay. Uh, but they're not listening.
Hmm.
They're just not listening. And so they just keep telling you that you're okay. And maybe if you hear that 100 times, maybe it'll just magically happen. Well, that's not really how something like this works. And so I realized that um, if I told them what I was going to plan on doing, they were going to stop me. And
Yeah.
I knew I needed to do this. I knew I needed to do this in, I mean, it was almost like when I saw that photograph in the magazine, it actually gave me the path I needed to take. Like I didn't know what the path was before that. And then I saw that picture and it was like, I'm going to find out where it is and I'm going to go there and
Hmm.
I'll figure it out from there. So for me, the universe was like, this is where you need to go. And
So
I
that
was
was like a
like,
sign, Bibiana, that I mean, it wasn't a coincidence you open up a magazine and here's this beautiful beach. You think that was your sign, like, okay, here's the doorway.
yeah, yeah. And the fact that I recognized it, I don't know. Maybe I had been looking for a sign before that because everybody kept telling me I was, okay and fine and I knew I wasn't, but I wasn't old enough to really like have massive amounts of information to sort of inform me as to what to say to them, saying that I wasn't. So when I saw that picture, it was like I almost like when somebody snaps their fingers
Hmm.
and everything just lined up. So I think it was the universe. I really do. And the universe protected me too, because I mean, you can imagine a young woman on her own who's not street smart running around the Caribbean, and every creeper you can imagine came out of the woodwork. But I'm a fast runner, I'm a fast talker, and I make a really amazing pina colada.
I have to ask you, at a young age, you couldn't have been an introvert and do this. Do you
So
consider yourself an extrovert?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I've taken those tests. It says I'm an ambivert. Like I'm
Oh,
like 79% extro, and the rest of it's like, but I actually think I'm pretty much full on extrovert. I've only become like a little bit more quieted nowadays because
mhm.
I've come to the conclusion that you should keep your circle small.
Yeah. Well, I understand what an ambivert is. I identify with that. To me, I call it an extroverted introvert. So that 3 years in the islands, that's just so hard to fathom because the average person, young man or woman, probably would never do that in a million years. But I think you dream big,
Yeah, I
and you
do. I
started
go,
out at a young age too.
yeah, I think, I think for me, I realized that I sort of needed a spiritual bomb to
Ah,
like replace the gigantic hole that was left there when I realized that my dream was gone. It's like crazy because I almost died on the side of the road then, and
yes.
I felt myself dying. I mean, I knew I
Yeah.
was close because I mean, let's face it, when your body's not connected, all the pieces, um, it's not a real happy feeling.
Yeah.
And so I realized that, and within the next 48 hours, I'm fighting for my life, right? And so I'm alive, and they're like, we're gonna put you back together. But then when they put me back together, I was like, but I don't have the capability of living my life on my own terms anymore. So I'm like, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
I don't want to be alive. I don't want to be normal.
Normal is boring, right? Or
For me,
normal is
normal was like, yeah, for
the
me,
setting
normal
on the
was
dryer, right?
right. Normal is like it's like the gap of lifestyles for me. You know what I mean? It's like it's twill pants and the perfectly matched sweater. I did not want that. I
Gotcha.
wanted yeah, I wanted fantasy ball gowns and escapes in helicopters and
Mm,
you know um I don't know, French cuisine at my picnic. I wanted everything.
mm, mm. So what happened after those 3 years in the islands? What happened? I mean, you got something out of it and then you moved forward to something new.
Well, what I really think killed me is the fact that I was living in this beautiful cove and above it, actually. And so every morning I would go down and I would swim across the cove. So it was in Ocean Cove.
Mm.
And because of the fact that I'd had so many skin grafts and had so much scarring, and I still have all of that, but it was like black from basically like blood being stuck in between layers, and it
Mhm.
was horrible. Like 16-year-olds are vain. Let's face it.
Yes, I remember being 16. Now you had quite a few surgeries. How many were
Yeah.
there?
I believe there were 27
Oh my,
complete.
oh my goodness.
But it was like putting bones together or putting tissue together, or it was horrible. Every couple of weeks, surgery. Every couple, I don't know how my parents kept from going bankrupt, honestly.
Yeah.
But um swimming across this cove though actually took what was, I considered, very gruesome looking to at least relatively normal. And as I'm swimming back and forth every morning across this cove, I'm thinking, I'm just doing like easy side stroke. And, it maybe 60, 70 feet deep in this cove. I can see all the way to the bottom, even the anchor chains, going down. And
Yes.
so you're just seeing it, and I'm getting to the coral, and my little friend Charlie, the giant barracuda who lived in the side of the cove, would sort of dart out and think about, I don't know, ripping me to shreds. And then he'd say, oh, it's just her, and leave me alone.
He knew better. Don't be
Right.
Bibiana.
I would get a little too close. He wouldn't like it. And he would, come out of his little hole. And but eventually I realized that I had to get back to the real world. And no offense to anyone who lives in the Caribbean. When you're from the Caribbean, that is your world. When you're not from the Caribbean, you're basically just like, you're stealing time. You're not doing the stuff that you need to do to like get back on track. And so when I came back, it was like I said, it was about a year and a half to 2 years. When I came back, I realized I needed an education. I'm I'm too smart to not be educated, and so I got into one of those schools where everybody's done kind of dicey stuff, and or they got pregnant and nobody wants them in the regular school. So I went to one of those things and graduated on time with my class because I'm like that, like,
You were
so I get to spend almost 2 years of my life screwing off in the Caribbean, and then ended up graduating from high school, and um, decided I wanted to go to college. So I was going to like a small, college in the near the town where I grew up, and trying to figure out, what I was going to do after that. And I studied psychology, and I also studied travel,
mm,
and ended up getting hooked into the shiny, shiny, shiny world of international travel. And this is when you
love
could make
that.
a lot of money doing
Yes.
it. And so I got hooked into it and ended up doing that for many, many, many years. And and I've traveled in a lot of places, not just from that job, but just from, sometimes I just sort of get tired of things and I sell everything I own and I go to this cool place and then I figure it out from there. Now that I'm a mom, I don't do stuff like that anymore. Once you have your roots, you can't do that. But um I think the the biggest thing is that whenever things started getting normal and what I would consider really stable
Mhm.
is usually when I would get an itch and very restless to
Mhm.
like go out and to feel life more, with more power, with more energy, with more something.
Mhm.
So the resiliency thing for me has been, some of it's been my fault that this resiliency exists, in the sense that I make bad choices and then I have to climb back out of the cave. But other times the resiliency really just comes from life something that hits you between the eyes you don't expect, that you absolutely never could fathom would happen. And it happens, and you have to figure out, am I going to live? Or am I going to die? Or
Mhm.
am I just going to settle? Or am I just going to lay down on the ground and suck my thumb? I've thought about that a few times myself.
Sure.
Yeah, but it's not a good look. After 24 hours, I actually forced myself to get up off the ground and take my thumb out of my mouth.
Well, I
But
can't see victimhood on you at all. I just can't see it. I can just see you brushing off the dirt and saying,
I'm like,
ah, what's
is that
next?
all you got? Is that all you got?
Yeah, is that all you got? Oh my gosh. I want to talk about a climb that you took with your husband as the only woman, because there's not too many women who've done this event and this act. Can we get into that? I love this story.
Sure, sure. Well, with COVID, everybody had cabin fever, especially people like me who are used to being able to just save their money and go wherever the heck they feel like going and doing, cool things. I just have to save my money and then I get to go. That's my only holdout is usually the cash. So, my husband and I had our 10th anniversary at home, and it was very boring and very quiet and very uneventful. I mean, I think we had grilled cheese and tomato soup and watched a movie. I mean, like it was a year and a half into COVID. What are you going to do?
Right.
And so he and I decided at that moment that we needed to do something like really amazing when the world stopped having all these restrictions. And
Mm.
so we planned a trip with a friend who was taking a bunch of people up on Kilimanjaro for I think a 7-day climb. Now, I'm not a mountain climber. I have climbed some mountains. I've done a lot of hiking in wilderness areas because those are the places where I feel the happiest. And
Mhm.
it could be wilderness Caribbean, or it could be wilderness, Western United States, whatever. It doesn't matter as long as it doesn't have a bunch of stuff all over the beach or up on the mountain. I'm happy. I like nature. Um, but anyway, when he proposed it, we started getting ready. So we were walking 4 to 6 miles every day in the heat down here, carrying the water, getting used to it. And my husband ended up getting an amazing job opportunity in Charlotte. So we had to cancel the Kilimanjaro climb because we were moving. So we moved to Charlotte for about 4 months. We couldn't stand it. Charlotte is not our kind of town.
Gotcha. Not enough
And
wilderness. Huh?
right. So we moved back to Savannah, and thankfully we hadn't sold our house yet. So we moved back into the same exact house. It's cleaner than it was when I moved into it because it was built in 1923. So, I had it ready to sell. So I was like, "Ooh, spring cleaning, big time!" Right? There was nothing in it. But so we started working on it again. And we finally, oh my gosh, being on the plane and flying to Tanzania was the most exciting thing for me because I honestly wasn't sure we were ever going to be able to do it because it's expensive. You
Yeah.
have to train for months and months. And I'm not a fly away little lightweight girl these days. So I will say to anybody who's thinking about climbing Kilimanjaro, every pound feels like 10 on that mountain. I ain't fooling. So buy the lightest boots you can handle, lose as much weight as you can safely do, because I am telling you that that first day when we went down into a gully to go back up to get to the first night in Simba camp, I was like, and they kept saying, "This is an easy day. This is an easy day." I was like, "Oh my God." Like, what did I get myself into? And but Simba what was interesting about Simba, and by the way, Kilimanjaro is 19,324 feet high. So imagine the clouds, and there's a whole section of the mountain that is above it.
So over 3 miles high.
Oh yeah, you could see it. It's the tallest. It is literally the tallest mountain in Africa. And it is one of the 7 sacred peaks. So it's like really big deal mountain to climb. It's like you can't just go there and climb the mountain. Trust me, that mountain will break you in half like a Kit Kat bar.
Oh,
But
mm,
um, but anyway, so the first night, so Simba Camp is really amazing because you're walking through the jungle. So, and every zone on this earth is represented on this mountain. So you have jungle, then you have arid, then you have
mm,
desert, then you have tundra, like Arctic tundra. So we're in the jungle, top of the jungle. This is where everybody camps the first night. There were probably 50 people around. But I'm the only girl in our group, and there's an older woman in another encampment, and there's this very mysterious Spanish guy all by himself with like 13 guides. I don't know what his deal was, but anyway, he spoke French and Spanish, so I spoke to him for a minute.
mm.
But and then another group of people. But Simba Camp, we didn't realize because at night, when it's humid like it was, it is. I am not kidding you guys. You see this darkness behind me, like these trees? Those trees would be like white/gray with how dark Simba Camp gets at night.
Mhm.
And I'm not afraid of the dark. If I was, I wouldn't go on a wilderness mountain, right? But you have to get up and go relieve yourself in the middle of the night, and it's a bit of a walk.
You
Bit
can't
of a
see
walk.
anything. You can't see in front of your nose. Oh my.
No, I'm wearing a headlamp, and I literally can't like the. It feels like you're walking inside of an oil spill. I mean, like it's a darkness that you
Black.
can't even really fathom,
Mm,
like deep space darkness.
mhm,
And but anyway, my husband is hard of hearing,
mhm,
and I didn't realize that his his stability in walking, his balance comes from his ears and his vision.
mhm,
So his ears basically have none. So when he looks at stuff, he needs to be able to have depth, to have that depth judgment. And in this darkness, he didn't have it. So
mm,
he gets up first. Like when you're in a little tent, and you're on the side of a mountain you've never been on, and somebody gets up in the middle of the night, they wake you up too.
mm,
So he goes out of the tent. I'm like, yeah, okay. And I'm just kind of counting. Like if 10 minutes go by, I'm gonna be like looking for him, right? I don't know what he's doing out there. I didn't ask. So he goes and does whatever. Well, he comes back in the tent and like, the tent's like shaking because that's how, you know. And I'm like,
because you
oh
can't see
my gosh. I'm thinking this is Simba Camp. I'm thinking he just saw a freaking lion, right? And I'm like,
mm,
okay, I have lip gloss, a headlamp, and a hiking boot. Oh yeah, I could just stuff the hiking boot in the lion's mouth. That'll slow him down for 5 minutes.
oh my
You know,
gosh.
leather's very chewy. So, but that's not what it is at all.
Uh-huh.
He's so deeply affected. And I asked him if it was okay to talk about this, by the way.
Yeah.
But he was so deeply affected by the dark that it literally, I think it almost gave him like a
Mhm.
a feeling of uh just complete vacuum, like panic. Like, I mean, freaky, like running across the ridge of the mountain, panic. And
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know how to deal with this.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I'm not equipped to deal with this.
We're down to our last minute. So you survived and thrived, and your husband did too, and had all these opportunities. Now I know my guests are wondering more about you. How can they contact you? I know you have a ton of books you've written. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Probably the best if you want to follow me and like connect. My Instagram, Bibiana, Bibiana Kall on Instagram. I'm there. I try to be there every day or every other day. Or you can check me out on my website, which is www.bibianakral.com. But I am like literally all over the place. I'm on Amazon,
Mm.
YouTube. Um, I'm always trying to work on things.
Yes, well,
So
we are out of time. Bibiana, you're one of the most resilient, boldest, furious women I know, even compared to men. To our listeners, stay empowered. We'll see you next time. Please reach out to Bibiana and stay empowered.
thank you so much.